Hi, I'm Stu from HiveMind Automation and welcome back to the Hive. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at how to set up the Home Assistant companion app on your Android smartphone or Android tablet. Now, this is the 7th video in my Getting Started in Home Assistant for 2022 series, and it builds on the concepts from previous videos. So if you've missed any of those previous videos, you might want to check those out, and there's plenty more to come. So while I roll the intro, why don't you take a moment to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you get notified when I release new videos each week. While you're at it, you can check out my affiliate links in the video description to purchase just some of the gadgets that you might have seen in my previous videos and help to support the channel at the same time. Or you can also support the channel by signing up to NordVPN using the affiliate link in the description, or even support the channel directly by using my Buy Me a Coffee link. With all of that out of the way, let's get started. So up until now in the Getting Started with Home Assistant in 2022 series, we've been focusing on getting Home Assistant set up using the regular web interface on our laptop or desktop computer. In this video, we're going to take a look at setting up the companion app on Android. And in the next video, we'll go through setting up the iOS companion app. I've done this video before, but it's been a while, so we're updating it for 2022. Now, there seem to be a lot of confused comments on my previous video about this topic. So before we get into the companion app, we're going to need to have met some prerequisites. You need to have already set up a Home Assistant server, and this can be on a Raspberry Pi, an old computer, or even inside of a Docker container if you have a NAS that supports that. If you haven't already set up a Home Assistant server, you should probably go back to this video that I'll link in the top right, and follow the instructions there. The second thing you'll need is to have set up Home Assistant for remote access. If you haven't done that yet, you'll only be able to connect to your Home Assistant server while your phone is connected to your home Wi-Fi, so it sort of defeats the whole purpose of setting up the mobile companion app. If you've not set up remote access for your Home Assistant, I'll also link the video where I covered that in the top right. And there were two methods in that video to do it. One method costs $6.50 US a month and supports the developers of Home Assistant. The other way is completely free, but it does require some more setup on your home network, including port forwarding. Lastly, at least for this video, you're going to need an Android phone and a Google Play Store account. Now, me personally, I don't own an Android phone, but for the purposes of this video, I've downloaded Android Studio on my Mac, and I'm running a Pixel 4 in the simulator. There's probably going to be some weirdness with how this works in the simulator. Not to mention, I'm not an Android user, so I'm not always 100% sure what I'm doing with it. Now, provided you've met the prerequisites, let's head over to our phone and we will get started by opening up the Google Play Store. Once there, we'll need to sign in, so I'll do that quickly. Okay, so now that I've signed into Google Play with my Google account, we can click in the search, and we're going to search for Home Assistant, and we'll just click on that first one. Takes us to the page. And we can just install it. It is a free app. It doesn't cost you anything to install. So we will install that, and it's going to download. And now, while we're waiting for that to download, I'm going to hit the home button, and I'm going to open up Google Chrome. With Google Chrome open, I'm going to type in the IP address of my Home Assistant instance, and that's because the Home Assistant.local address doesn't work inside the simulator. It might work for you, but I'm just going to go to http://192.168.1.146 on port 8123. And I will be prompted to sign into my Home Assistant instance. So I will sign in with my username and password that I created when I set up this instance. So we've got the interface here inside our web app. Obviously, this isn't very useful because we're just using the local IP address. The other problem we're going to have if we have set up remote access using Home Assistant Cloud, we're not going to know that URL off the top of our head. So we can go into the menu here, scroll down to the bottom and go to Settings. I'm going to go to Home Assistant Cloud, and I'm going to scroll down to where we've got remote control here. I'm just going to copy this URL, and then I'll back out to the home screen, and we've got Home Assistant here. So now that Home Assistant is installed, we can open up the Home Assistant app, and this is where we get into the initial setup. Straight away, it tells us that it connects to your Home Assistant server and allows integrating data about you and your phone. And I'm just going to click continue on that. And it's going to ask us to select the instance that you'd like to connect to. Now, it's entirely possible that your instance might just automatically show up on here if you've got discoverability turned on. I believe mine is not showing up here because of the simulator. So I'm going to click this enter address manually, and it tells you here that you can either use your duckdns.org. So if you went down the duckdns route, you would type in your duckdns.org and then the port that you forwarded. So in my case, I forwarded port 8124. But what I'm going to do in this case, because I went over to the Home Assistant web interface and I copied the Home Assistant Cloud URL, I'm going to click and hold here and tap paste, and then we've got our Nabu Casa URL in here, and I'm just going to tap connect on that. It's going to take me to the sign-in page of my Home Assistant instance. So again, using the same username and password that I set up when I created the Home Assistant instance in video 2 of this series, I'm just going to put in those details there. And now it's going to ask us for some permissions. So we can change the device name here. So if I wanted to change this from SDKG phone, I can change this to Pixel Test, and I can turn on location tracking, and that's going to allow us to enable location tracking and send that data to Home Assistant. And it's going to ask us to allow that. I'll click while using the app. And we can change location permission to allow all the time as well. Then we can go back out of there and we'll hit allow, and then we'll click finish. And we now have our Home Assistant interface. So I'll bring this up and we should be able to turn the WLED bar off, and that's turned off and back on, and that's come back on. And if I bring that up, I can change the brightness. So while that was relatively quick and easy to set up, and we can see that we have control over our various accessories here that are on our dashboard, and that's great. But there are other things that the mobile app gives us that are particularly useful. So now that we've got the Home Assistant dashboard and we have control over all of our various accessories through the mobile interface, I'm going to click on the hamburger menu in the top right hand corner. And you can see in the menu, we've got all the dashboards that we've created so far on this instance, and even access to things like hacks and Studio Code Server and the terminal. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Settings tab here, and I'm going to go to the Devices and Services. I'm going to click on the Devices tab down the left. And we can search the devices, and we see we've got the Pixel Test. We go into Pixel Test, which is this new one. We can see that we have all the data that's available for this phone. So we can see device info, we can see the firmware number there, and we've got some sensors. 21 are not shown because these are not enabled. But if we were to click into one of these and expand the advanced settings, we could actually then enable and then update that, and it'll take about 30 seconds to update There's quite a number of sensors even just in this first section here. But then we get to this diagnostic section and we see some of the information that's available by default. So we've got things like battery health, battery level, the battery state, whether it's charging or not charging, battery temperature, charger type, and whether it's plugged in or not plugged in. And I can, if I change the settings here in my simulator, I'll change that to charging, and you'll see that we've got an AC charger type and it hasn't changed to battery state charging yet. There it goes. I'll just update the battery level. It can take probably 30 seconds to a minute for the details to update. So quite a number of sensors available straight out of the box without enabling any additional ones. So any of these sensors can, in theory, be used for automations. For example, you could have in an automation that the condition be your phone is plugged in, and that controls whether or not your goodnight scene does certain things or will even run. Another thing to note here is this pixel test entity here, which shows unknown at the moment. But this is a device tracker entity, and device trackers are used when we start talking about presence detection, which we'll get to in another video. I have done a previous video about it, but I'm going to redo that video for this 2022 series. Essentially, the idea is that you can set up multiple zones, geographic zones, inside Home Assistant, and when you are inside one of those zones, it will show that zone name here. So if you are inside your home zone, then it would show home. You could create a zone for when you're at work. You could create a zone for when you are at the gym, and use the data of when you enter or exit one of those zones to either trigger or be a condition on automations within Home Assistant. There's another 50 entities not shown here, and we can see there's tons of things that we can get. So whether or not the device is locked, whether or not we're in power save mode, what the Wi-Fi state is. So the Wi-Fi state might be a good one to actually enable and have as a condition in your Home Assistant automations. So Wi-Fi connection is another interesting one in here. So if you were to enable that, and I think that would be a good idea to enable that one, with the Wi-Fi connection enabled. So with the Wi-Fi state and the Wi-Fi connection enabled, and that Wi-Fi connection will come up in a second. So if you do enable the Wi-Fi connection or the Wi-Fi state sensors inside your Home Assistant companion app, you could then use those as conditions again in an automation. So an automation would only run to a specific wireless network. So there's not really much else to look at here. If I swipe right from the left-hand edge and we'll go back to settings, and I'm going to go down to companion app, we can take a look at some of the individual settings available specifically for the Home Assistant companion app. So you can configure the Home Assistant URL in here. You can also configure your home network Wi-Fi SSID, and you can create multiple Wi-Fi SSIDs in here if you'd like. So I could type in the force and click plus. So when you're connected to any of those Wi-Fis that are in there, it thinks that you're at home. And that's where you can then do things like have a different connection URL when you are inside your home Wi-Fi network. And then if you have that second internal connection URL, you can prioritize that internal URL. And that will basically just mean that it will always try connecting to the internal URL first before it tries connecting to the external one. We can change the device name in the device registration, and we can also manage sensors and sensor update frequencies. So if I go to manage sensors, we can add a whole bunch of different things in here, like we can allow the sensor for next alarm. There's all sorts of other things in here. So whether or not the headphones, we can see whether headphones are plugged into the device. We can see the battery health is already in here. So we could disable some sensors here as well if we wanted to clean up the number of sensors showing up inside Home Assistant. Things like geocoded location That can be particularly helpful, calculated based on GPS data using Google's location API, and it just returns an estimate of the address. It's not always accurate, but it's better than nothing. So there's quite a lot here, and you see we've got background location enabled. We can turn on high accuracy mode. That will try and increase the accuracy of the GPS data. And you can change the high accuracy update interval, and we can turn that on, and that is set to update instantly. Speaking of updating instantly, we see we've got this sensor update frequency back out in the settings, and you can change the frequency a sensor will update. So not all sensors update instantly, and the ones that don't update instantly will normally update on a 15-minute interval, but you can change that to a fast while charging. So the sensors will update every minute when the device is charging, and when not charging, it will be 15 minutes. Or you can set it to be fast always, so it updates every minute always. That is going to consume a bit more battery if you've got that fast always. I would probably go for normal or fast while charging. It depends on how real time you need your sensor data to be. Back out here, we can put the application in full screen. I don't really understand that because the application's already full screen, but that's okay. We can turn on locking, so use biometric or screen lock credentials to unlock the app. We've got pinch to zoom, does what it says. Autoplay videos, I don't really know what that's going to do. I think that might just autoplay camera feeds if you've got camera feeds in your Home Assistant instance. There's WebView remote debugging. Again, I'm not too sure what that's for. I think that's really if you're troubleshooting front-end issues, and maybe it's more of a developer tool. You can change the default language. You can change the theme, so you can set it to light or dark theme. I would obviously recommend dark theme because it's better. You can also manage when you've got a persistent connection. So this will allow the app to receive push notifications directly. So if you leave this at the default, the notifications are always delivered via Google, and it's going to be the most battery efficient. If you were to go to always, it's going to be the least battery efficient. It's going to keep the connection back to your Home Assistant instance alive all the time and have those push notifications come directly from your Home Assistant instance rather than being pushed via Google. And we'll take a look at notifications in a video coming up very soon. We've got notification history, so we can see the history of notifications we've received, and there's also some debug information, including rate limiting, and we've got a rate limit of 500 notifications, and that resets, as far as I can tell, about every 24 hours. Something that's unique to the Android app is these manage tiles. So we've got tiles here. I'm not super familiar with tiles, but we can also manage shortcuts. So we can set up a shortcut so that we can call this WLED bar, and I'll leave the description, and the shortcut is going to go to the entity ID. I'm going to go to entity ID, and I want to find WLED bar, so light WLED bar. Okay, so we needed a description in there, so we've entered WLED bar, we've got a description. It's a shortcut of entity ID, and we've got the entity ID for the light.WLED bar. I'm going to click add shortcut. So now, if I back out of here, I'm going to go back to the home screen. I'm going to click and hold on the Home Assistant until we get this menu, and we've got bar light. If I click that, it's going to take me straight to the dashboard interface for the WLED bar. So that's great. I'm going to click on the three-dot stack again, go back to settings and go back to companion app and scroll down back to the manage shortcuts. So we've got manage shortcuts. The thing that is kind of interesting here though is manage widgets. And we can add a widget, and let's say we add a service button, and we can create a service here. So if I go light.toggle, so I've created a service for light.toggle, and I want light.WLED bar. And I can leave pretty much everything else alone because this is purely a toggle. And we can we can change the icon here if we like. So let me find something. Let's just use this checkbox. We'll click select there. And we will click add widget. So we've got this service button one by one. It's going to toggle. We're going to click add automatically. And so we've got this light.toggle. And if I head back out to the home screen, we've got this widget here on the home screen. And if I bring up the main camera again, and then click on this widget, it should call the service and turn off the WLED bar, and we can click it again and it turns it back on. So that's kind of nice about the Android version. I don't believe this is in the iOS version, but I will have to play around with that. So back out on the settings screen, we've got a link to documentation, show and share logs, show change log, view the full change log. We've got the application version number, a link to the privacy policy, and we can turn crash reporting on as well. So that's the Home Assistant companion app for Android. If you're an Android user, there's some really great features in the Android version of the app that I'm actually a little bit jealous of being an iPhone user. The widgets that you can set up to both show you sensor data and just plain interact with accessories right from the home screen are really cool. And there are definitely ways for me to do that on iOS. It's just a little bit more involved to set that up. There's also tons more sensor data available on the Android phone than on the iPhone, but the downside is you do need to go into each sensor and individually enable them. Be sure to let me know in the comments section down below your favorite feature of the Home Assistant companion app, whether it's for iOS or Android. That is all we have for this video, and I do hope that it helped you in your home automation journey. Be sure to drop a comment down below with a home automation idea you'd like to see me cover in a future video. Don't forget to also follow HiveMind Automation on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you like this video, hit the thumbs up button down below to give it a like. If you're not already subscribed, please consider changing that now. And while you're at it, if you hit the bell icon, you'll also receive a notification when I release new videos each week. If you're currently in the market for a VPN provider, I've also placed an affiliate link for NordVPN in the video description. And I chose to partner with NordVPN because they have the best infrastructure of any of the VPN providers I looked into. They have a strict no-logs policy and servers all over the planet. And on top of that, they've got apps for just about every platform around, including Windows, Mac, Linux, iOS, and Android. So no matter what your platform is, you can help to protect your sensitive personal information while you browse the web, even if the coffee shop's unsecured wireless network doesn't have any other security. So get a VPN today and use my link below to sign up for NordVPN. Lastly, if you like what I'm doing here and you want help to support the channel directly, there is a Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below. Contributions that you make through Buy Me a Coffee are put towards making more and better content for you to enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Stu from HiveMind Automation, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.